Okay, so first things first, I just want to thank everybody, really truly from the bottom of my heart, for all of your prayers and all of your learning and all of your tzedakah donations and pidyon hanefesh that you gave for my recovery. And Baruch Hashem, I'm feeling much, much better. It's slowly progressing every day for the most part. Sometimes I take a few steps back, a few steps forward. But thank God, Hashem really equipped me with our Chabura and the Torah Rabbi Nachman of running and returning. And like our dear chassid here, Aaron London, said to me right before Shabbat that, perhaps the whole reason you're going through things like this is to be able to give it over in an authentic way to us. And I think that's true. Ever since I started teaching this for the past, 5-6 years, I've definitely lived most of the Torahs, if not all of them, that I was teaching, and specifically the time that I was teaching that lesson. So you can't really see that as you're going through it, but when you look back and you reflect on it, it's pretty easy to see, actually. And so I was in a few weeks stage of shov. It's funny because I already thought I was in shov, meaning to return or to be in a state of mochin dekatnut, of constricted consciousness, where your knowledge or experience of Hashem's goodness is concealed from you in an explicit way. And it's at that time that we need to rely on Amunah, which is what we're going to speak about in a moment. And this is the concept of holding on, of returning. I want to first dedicate this class and all future classes to a dear student who on Gevura Sheba Gevura in Sefirat Ba'omer passed away unexpectedly. His name is Neria, and he came to a bunch of the classes when I was in Queens. He had a very deep yearning soul. He was a Baal Tshuva. He was in college and then ended up going to Chabad and then having an awakening that Hashem was real. And it was specifically originally through Chassidut, and he was always inspired by Kabbalah and Chassidut primarily. And when I was in Queens, he would come to the classes and he would text me and he would call me and then send me a voice message trying to clarify things. But he was very genuine. He was very deep. And he was the one person, I think, that I was always surprised he didn't come to more of the classes because of how much he connected. He was on a trip with his yeshiva in Arizona, and he drowned. So it was very, very sad news. Very hard to hear. Didn't expect it, obviously. Rabbi Nachman says that during Sfirat HaOmer, that a person who has who has ears to hear and eyes to see and a heart to feel, he's going to realize that everything that takes place on any given day during Sfirat HaOmer is really a manifestation of that day's Sfira. And of all the days of Sfirat HaOmer, we are learning that Gevura represents din, represents judgment, represents concealment of Hashem's light in our life. So Gevura Sheba Gevura is really Chastara Shebetoch Chastara. It's the concealment within the concealment. That the greatest concealment of Hashem's light and godliness in our life, to the most intense, most tangible extent that we don't see it at all, and you don't even see that you don't see. That's on Gevura Sheba Gevura, and that was actually when he passed away. And so obviously I don't have any words, and there's nothing to explain, except to say that my condolences go to his family, and that every class should be an aliyah of his neshama. I have no doubt that he achieved his tikkun in a very short amount of time. He was one of those very special souls who, as soon as he realized Hashem existed, he just flipped everything in his life. And I told one of the students in the group who originally told me about it, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, whenever he heard of some type of tragedy amongst the Jewish people or in the community, his response was always, add more light. Add more light. And when people came and said, but we can't add any more light, we're already doing everything that we possibly can. He said, no, B'davka specifically, when there's a tragedy in the Jewish people, you need to do more now. You need to. You have to add more light. So, to take his memory and people like him and live with it, really live with Hayom, and that makes him alive even now. To not think to ourselves, 10 years from now, 5 years from now, 1 year from now, 6 months from now, 1 week from now, but to really live like Rabbi Nachman says, Hayom, today. To do the best that you can today and give your best effort, give your heart, give your mind, give your soul. And in this way, we're able to break through as well a lot of shtusim, because we have a lot of things that are big barriers for us to become who we really are. And a lot of it has to do with superficial things and perspective and perception of us. But when you realize how fragile life is, and you realize how you're not guaranteed anything in your life, then all of a sudden everything that's in your life becomes much more precious, and everything that's in your life becomes much more salient. And this is a huge blessing, because then you can go do what you need to do in the face of all adversity, because you realize that what's important is really important. Or as my rabbi's rabbi said, Rabelsky, so he was a very big tzaddik, and there's biographies written about him at the time that he was living, like many tzaddikim. He was very controversial, although now we consider him to be like one of the greatest tzaddikim and gedolim of the past, 20, 30, 40 years. So I remember when I was speaking to my rabbi, Rav Walken, while he was alive, about the project, Sion Breslov, and everything that I've been trying to do, all the houses that I go visit to try to help people personally, and whatever. My rabbi knew everything that I was doing privately, as well as publicly. And he said, I had a rabbi once like this. His name was Rabelsky. And he used to get involved in everybody's stuff. And he used to try to help everybody, no matter where they were. And he used to tell this story about Rabelsky that he loved saying over, and it's something that I always keep with me. That Rabelsky, despite the fact that he was one of the biggest Talmidei Chachamim of the whole generation, and in some eyes he was the biggest. And the Torah says that when a person is capable of learning Torah at that level, he can't even do chesed for another Jew if someone else can do it. Because nobody's going to be able to replace the level of Torah learning that he has and teaching that he would be able to do, while somebody else could go help that person. However, every week he was getting on this radio station and he was teaching very, very basic things to secular Jews about Judaism to try and help them in their journey. And his students came to him and saw he was doing this, and they said, Rabbi, why are you going on the radio every week and saying such basic things about the Torah to non-affiliated Jews? Like literally anybody could do this. You could be studying and teaching and like at the highest level that the whole world depends on. And Rabelsky's response was, when you care, you don't care. My rabbi says all the time, when you care, you don't care. You're right, Lamaisa, you're right, it's true. But if you realize and you really feel that these people are your children, they're your brothers, they're your sisters, so when you care about them, you don't care anymore. Doesn't make a difference. Yes, that's true if you're in a pragmatic state of mind and we're talking about things in a superficial, artificial sense. But when you're a real live human being with a beating heart, and you really care about every single Jew, and you're willing to give up your life for every single Jew, and you don't see anybody as less than you or beneath you, you don't see anybody as in a different state as you, except for the fact that they have different circumstances than you, and you start to contemplate your place in the world and what Hashem gave you as opposed to them, the amount of empathy that you should have for that person, that you shouldn't even have thoughts of, well, who could else do this? Because when you care, you don't care. And so Bezrat Hashem, we should be able to care so much about what's real and genuine in our life that we don't care about anything else. In our last class, we finished off by speaking about the fact that there's two modes, two hanhagas of existence. The primary hanhaga of existence is called din. It's called mida keneged mida. It's called a person does this and he elicits this response. If he does positive actions or she does positive actions, she elicits a spiritual positive response. If they engage in negative spiritual actions, then they experience a negative reciprocal response. Why did Hashem create the world this way? So that we should be able to experience schar, that we should be able to experience our own positive reward for our own positive actions, meaning that we're creating our reality, right? And in this way, we would be co-creators with Hashem, partners with Hashem, and this would be the good that we would receive forever because we had a tremendous integral part in the receiving of it, or like the Zohar says, a person does not like to receive free bread, simply. However, there is another state of existence, which is actually higher than din, which is called rachamim. And the nature of rachamim is that it's given to a person regardless of their merit. Hashem gives you compassion, He gives you kindness, He gives you love, He helps you out, irregardless of what you're doing, what you have done, the mistakes that you've made, the issues that you're currently dealing with, your unrectified self. All of these things Hashem overlooks because He loves you and He just simply wants to help you. Or when you care, you don't care. So this is rachamim. This is higher. Now Rabbi Nachman says, how does a person elicit rachamim? How does a person draw down Hashem's compassion, which we need to in order to nullify judgments, in order to nullify difficulties and challenges in our life, or concealments of godliness in our life? So Rabbi Nachman's chiddush, which is really based on Kabbalah and the Arizal, is through tefillah. When a person has emunah peshuta, which we're calling the lost princess, which what Rabbi Nachman says in the 7th lesson of Likutei Moharan, is really tefillah. That's the expression of simple faith. When a person has faith, Rabbi Nachman teaches, the manifestation of faith is prayer. And we learn it from Moshe Rabbeinu, that Moshe Rabbeinu's hands were up in emunah. That's what the Torah says when the Jewish people were fighting against Amalek. Amalek represents the concealment of all kedusha, of all godliness. So, meaning this is what we're speaking about. Midat Adin. This is Amalek. And it said that the Jewish people, when they were looking up at Moshe, whose hands were up, we were winning. And when his hands were down, we were losing. But it says his hands, it didn't say his hands were up. It says his hands were emunah. So what does it mean his hands were emunah? And this is the first time that the word emunah is used in a verb form in the Torah. So how do we even explain this concept of emunah according to the hands were emunah? So Rabbi Nachman says this multiple times in Likutei Moharan, in the 7th Torah of Likutei Moharan, in the 9th Torah of Likutei Moharan, further on in Likutei Moharan, that Rabbi Nachman says that you see from here, where Targum Onkelos explains that Moshe's hands were emunah, it says that they were spread out in tefillah. So why didn't the Torah just say that Moshe's hands were out in tefillah? To show you that emunah is tefillah. Emunah is prayer. Faith is not a passive, like I'm not here, nothing's here, I'm just giving it all up. It's not that. It's that when a person really believes that Hashem cares about me, that He loves me, even above and beyond my circumstances, which is showing me the opposite of that, specifically in those moments. But I am living according to my belief that Hashem loves me and wants to help me more than what I see in my life. I'm going to ask for help. I'm going to speak to that part of Hashem. That's called emunah. That's called tefillah. Okay? And now Rabbi Nachman says that when a person has the lost princess, meaning tefillah or emunah, he arouses Hashem's rachamim. And this is all alluded to in the beginning of the story, where the king is only exclusively hanging out with the king's daughter, with his daughter, not his 6 sons. where the 6 sons are corresponding to Mida Keneged Mida, Hashem's Hanhaga, his modus operandus of you do and you receive, action and consequence. But Hashem doesn't love his 6 sons. Hashem loves his daughter. And he wants to spend, and he does spend time primarily with his daughter, meaning that Hashem's compassion is not with the 6 sons. It's with the daughter, meaning Emunah. When a person has Emunah Peshuta, like a little child, that he believes that Hashem is good and loves me, and that everything really is for the best, and he lives like that, and he projects that through his praying to Hashem from that place, so automatically the king is always with the king's daughter. So you arouse the Rachamim of Hashem because Hashem, the king, is with the daughter, meaning tefillah or emunah. This is what we said last time. Now Rabbi Nachman goes on to say like this. Ki kodem briat ha'olam hashvirat ha'kelim. So now the commentary is going to start to move into a very primary, very fundamental concept in Kabbalah, which was brought down by the Arizal HaKadosh, based on the Zohar and based on the beginning of Bereshit, where it speaks there about how in the beginning of creation, that there was Tohu, and there was Vohu, and there was darkness on the face of the depths. And there's 4 different references to some type of darkness or concealment. And then there was light. And it says that the Ruach of Elokim marachefet al panei hamayim, that the Ruach of Hashem is hovering over the water. Okay? All of this is a Kabbalistic reference to that in the beginning of creation, there was a breakage. There was a trauma. And this trauma destroyed all of creation. But after the destruction of creation, there was the Ruach of Elokim, which was hovering over the water, which we know represents the Mashiach. Okay? What was this destruction in the beginning of creation? So later on, again, this is alluded to in Bereshit, and this is the beginning of the Eitz Chaim by the Arizal, where he's expounding on this part of the Torah, where it speaks about the kings of Edom. The Arizal is speaking about this constantly in the Eitz Chaim, the kings of Edom, that there are these kings, that the one king reigns and then he dies. This king reigns and then he dies. This king reigns and then he dies. This king reigns and then it doesn't say anything else. And that king's name was Hadar. Okay? Now, there really is no context to this whole thing. We don't really understand what's going on, except that Edom or Esav, there are these kings which are coming from him, the source and the place of negativity. They reigned and they passed away, and literally we have no other context. And then it says that a Jewish king starts to reign after that. However, Kabbalah draws much information and much context for the beginning of creation from this place, because these kings of Edom actually represent the original kelim, the original vessels that Hashem utilized to create reality. And when Hashem shined his light through those vessels, they broke, they shattered. Because at that stage of creation, those vessels were not capable of holding the light of Hashem. Because the world at that place was in a state of chaos. It was in a state of turbulence. There was no structure. There was no mishpat. There was no balance. There was no harmony. And as a result of that, these original kings of Edom, meaning the 10 Sfirot, they broke in the beginning of creation. Shemizeh naflu reish pei chet nitzutzin kedushim. And now this is a very fundamental idea. What happened when those 10 Sfirot broke at the beginning of creation? The light which shined through them, there was a part of it, a fragment of it, which remained with the kelim that broke. And those kelim, those vessels that broke, devolved through creation, and this ended up creating the realm of the klipot, the realm of negativity. Because Obviously, we have this question, and all the rabbis are constantly dealing with this through the centuries. The Arizal does the best job of answering it up. How is there negativity that exists if Hashem is only good? And the Arizal brings you through all of the beginning of creation to get to that space. And Bekitzer, these vessels that Hashem originally created, which were supposed to receive the light of Hashem, Hashem made them in a built-in way in which they couldn't receive that light, and they broke. When they broke, they each had a fragment of the light which shined through them, which then goes down through creation, creating greater levels of concealment of godliness, because the light is with the broken vessel. And in the place of these broken vessels, that's where the world is created. And this is where Hashem gave us work to do. Like it says in the beginning of the Torah, that Hashem created work to do after the seventh day. So the obvious question is, what do you mean he created work to do? It should say that he finished all of his work. No, he created work to do, because on the 7 days of creation, meaning in the beginning of reality, the breaking of the vessels was to create a space for us to elevate and transform existence. How can you elevate and transform something if it's not broken? So the brokenness is really an opportunity for us to fix, to heal, to rectify, to take tohu, chaos, and to bring tikkun, rectification. And this concept of tohu, darkness coming before light, rectification, is the same exact paradigm of Esav coming before Yaakov. That Esav comes into the world, and he's dark, and he's fully formed, and he's intense, and he's hairy, meaning he's full of judgments. He's red, which is also the concept of judgment in the Torah. And when you think that it's hastar shebetoch hastar, this is the deepest level of concealment, and the revelation of godliness is gone forever, at that moment you see that he has a little baby, which is holding onto his leg, holding onto his ankle, who rises up from the darkness, Yaakov, Ekev. He's holding onto the heel of darkness. He's at the pinnacle of the hastar shebetoch hastar, the darkness, the concealment within the concealment. And at the moment that you think like a plant which is devolving in the dirt, and it's corroding, and it's about to go into complete bittul, nullification of self, it's at that moment that a flower blooms. So too, the same works with the revelation of godliness. That the light, the rectification, the tikkun of these broken vessels comes at the ekev, at the heel. So now, the commentary here brings the fact how much light fell with these vessels in the beginning creation. How much light do we have to lift up and out, right? There's a concept of birur, that really the Arizal teaches that what we're doing here after the vessels broke, what are we doing here for 6,000 years of creation? It's called birur. We are extracting the light which is contained in these broken vessels. When we are able to extract that remaining light, which has been stuck and trapped down there since the beginning of creation, the Mashiach is going to come immediately. How much light got trapped? So in Kabbalah, they bring down that there was 288 sparks of godliness, of Kedusha, which was trapped in these kelim. Where did they get this number from? So they say it's alluded to within the word marchefet. If you look at the root marchefet, rachaf, you have reish, che, pe. Reish, chet, pe, sorry. Reish, chet, pe. So the gematria of reish, chet, pe is 288, okay? This is alluding to the sparks of godliness which are trapped there, which gives substance to the commentary of Chazal, of the sages, which says that what is the Ruach of Elokim? What is the Spirit of Hashem which is hovering over the waters at the time of creation, at the time of brokenness? This is the Ruach of Mashiach. Because even though the 288 sparks of godliness which fell at the beginning of creation is the cause of the tohu, it's the cause of the chaos, on the other hand, it's also the cause of Mashiach. Because there is no necessity for a Redeemer if there is no brokenness. So the Mashiach is coming as a result of the Shvirat HaKelim, the breaking of the vessels. Just as Yaakov Avinu, he's coming on the heels of Esav, as a result of Esav. And you see this later on, fully borne out, when Yaakov only reaches his full potential and becomes Yisrael, which is what the Jewish people are named after, the highest level of consciousness, the highest state of soul, Yisrael, only came as a result of his daily, everyday grind, fighting with the forces of darkness in the world and in his personal life, called Esav. And only when it looks like, again, Yaakov is about to be defeated, he's about to be out, the Jew is about to be flamed out, that he flips and transforms everything, and he becomes Yisrael. That the Ekev, the heel, becomes Yisrael, Rosh Shli. He becomes the head in one moment. But that was only as a result of Esav. Esav gives birth to Yaakov. And this is the Chiddush of Kabbalah, that it's the darkness that gives birth to light, which is why in the Torah, we are the only calendar, so to speak, where the day starts with nighttime and it ends with daytime. Like my son asked me, why is the Torah telling us that it's night and it's day, one day? Why do we need to know that? Because this is the process of revelation. This is the process of redemption. Darkness precedes light. Galus, exile, precedes Geula, redemption. And Tohu, chaos, precedes healing. Okay? So, Mehem klipot yonkim et kocham v'chiyutam. And from them, the klipot nourish their strength and their life force. So the forces of negativity in our personal life, where are they getting their koach from? Where are they getting their energy from? They're getting their energy and their life force from those original 288 sparks that fell in the beginning of creation. Because like Kabbalah explains, like Hasidut explains, nothing can exist without the light of Hashem. How much light do the klipot have? Only a very minute amount. But that minute amount is what gives them life force. Without that minute amount, they wouldn't exist, because nothing can exist without the light of Hashem. But on the other hand, the fact that they have light of godliness, meaning these 288 sparks, that's what gives birth to the challenges and difficulties in our lives. But Hashem has mercy, has rachamim, he has compassion on them. And he's contemplating how to take them out from there. So now we have a very deep thing which the commentator here is transitioning to without explaining it. Chassidut goes on to explain that what are these 288 sparks of Kedusha? It's us. These sparks of godliness that became trapped in the realms of darkness at the beginning of creation, which need to be extracted and taken out from the place of chaos, is really ourselves. And the reason why it's so difficult for us on a day-to-day basis to be able to connect to Hashem, to be able to live in a higher way, to be able to live in a more peaceful and joyful way, to be able to live in a more connected way, is because we are actually the manifestation of those sparks that were trapped in the beginning of creation. And the Arizal teaches that the light which needs to be extracted through the generations, you're getting to lower and lower levels of klipot as time goes on, until you get to Ikvet de Mashiach, the heels of Mashiach, where in this generation, which is our generation, the light of godliness is trapped in the greatest place of darkness. And we need to be released from that place. So everybody who's on this class, for the most part, is Balei Tshuva or Gerim. What does that mean? Where does that come from? Why were we Bal Tshuva? Why were we Gerim? Why weren't we born into families that they believed in Hashem at a high level, that they gave us a healthy, loving, harmonious relationship of spirituality, not something traumatic or scary, not something which was void of spirituality? Why were we born like this? Because we are those sparks of godliness that were trapped in the beginning of creation. And the greatest sparks actually fell down to the lowest places. Many times we think, ugh, what's wrong with us? Why do we struggle so much? Why do we have unprecedented personal problems and problems on a collective level when really physically things have never been better? And the answer is that the greatest souls fall down to the lowest places. The greatest sparks of godliness were the ones that fell down. And this is alluded to by the fact that King David, the soul of Mashiach, it's taught many times in Kabbalah and Chassidut, and this is alluded to in the Midrashim and Chazal. Where did Hashem find David? He found him in stone. Stone represents the archetype of darkness, of Tohu. David only came from crazy, twisted experiences. He came from incest. He came from murder. He came from idolatry. He came from all these different places the seed of David came from, right? With Lot and with Yehuda and Tamar and with Yishai and his wife thinking that he was a mamzer, and like this. Every step of the soul of David, meaning the soul of Mashiach, being revealed in the world, it all came from very obscure, unusual, and dark places. And what's the reason for that? Because the Arizal teaches that the soul of the Mashiach, because it's the greatest, it falls down to the lowest places. And that's in order that it should lift up all of the other sparks of godliness which are trapped there with him, which are really sparks of his own soul. Like one time there was a person who asked, I asked Rabbi Yitzchak Ginsburg, is there any way we can know who the Mashiach is before he comes? Is there any way we can sort of get a feeling of it? Besides what the Rambam says, this person has to do in order that he can legitimately be called the Mashiach of the Jewish people. Is there like a chush? Is there a sense? Can we sniff it at all before it even happens? So he says that there is one big hint. He needs to be someone like the generation. That the generation needs to be in a very deep resonance with him. That he needs to be like the people of the generation. Why does he need to be like the people of the generation? Seemingly it would be the opposite, right? Our generation has never been further from Hashem. We are in the chastar shebetoch chastar. We are in the concealment within the concealment. We have never been in a more concealed state of spirituality. Never more, so to speak, more insensitive. Never more chaotic in our personal lives and in our spiritual lives. And Rabbi Yitzchak Ginsburg says that if you want to know what Mashiach is going to be like, he has to be someone who lives like that also. So this is a very deep point. And what's the reason for that? Because it's brought in Kabbalah that all of the souls of the generation are sparks of the Mashiach of that generation. So if you want to know what the Mashiach is like, he needs to be someone like the people of the generation. Okay? And one day the king, who is hanging out with the king's daughter, meaning Malchut, meaning Amunah, this is really the entire inspiration for this Chabura. When I read this part that we're going to do right now, I started to cry. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we have to teach this. This is something unbelievable. There's this trauma that takes place out of nowhere in this story. And so many of us can relate to this in our personal lives. How is it that the king loves hanging out with the king's daughter, keeps talking about it? He loves her more than the sons. He only spends time exclusively from her. He only gets nachat. He only gets joy from her, and it's tremendous joy. And then in the midst of their being together and hanging out in such a beautiful, intimate way, he gets angry at her in one moment and sends her away to the place of no good. It was such a stark contrast. It was not linear. You didn't see that coming at all. Out of nowhere, everything was going good, and then there's just this breakage. There's this trauma. Now he has a great question, and he's answering it up. I understand with the 6 sons, how there could be a trauma there. He doesn't have any love there. Right? He doesn't have any love for din. He doesn't have any love for mida keneged mida. He doesn't have any love for a superficial, artificial, purely intellectual state of existence. He loves the princess. He loves the Jewish people. He loves the simple Jew. He loves us like his children. He loves emuna, pashuta. He loves simple faith. How could it be that she's the one who's sent to the place of no good? Oh, so here we see a very big secret. That in some ways, it's all a facade. Because on the day that Hashem, meaning the king, meaning Hashem's rachamim, is alone with the princess, is alone with Amuna, because of his rachamim, he sends her on a mission. V'lo mitzad onesh, and not because of punishment, not because of consequence, because she doesn't live in the realm of punishment and consequence. She's the king's daughter. There's no mita keneged mita there. So how is she sent to a place of darkness to begin with, if she can only be related to through rachamim? It's an unbelievable question. If the king is only compassion, how does the king whose compassion sends the daughter, Emuna, the Jewish soul, down to chaos, to experience trauma? And the secret is because the compassion is the cause of the daughter being sent. The compassion is sending the daughter down to darkness. V'lo mitzad onesh, and not because they did something wrong. Ele merov chiba, only really, truly because of his tremendous love for her, his tremendous affection for her. Ki ze ikar hasheshuim sheyesh l'Hashem yiparach me'olam, because this is the essence of Hashem's pleasure and joy in the world. Bizman sherechokim ba'im amakirim oto, in the time that those who are furthest recognize his existence. Bivchinat kad ata Yitro, like it's brought in Parshat Yitro in the Zohar, that when the Jewish people were at Har Sinai and we realized that Hashem existed, it was very good. But the Zohar says unbelievable things, that when Yitro, who used to worship every single type of idolatry, who was as far as humanly possible from real, true spiritual connection with Hashem, the archetypal convert in Bal Tshuva in the Torah, when he says, Ani yadati, now I know that Hashem is real, the Zohar says that everything in spiritual existence above went crazy, started dancing, started singing. There was fireworks going off in the heavens when Yitro realized that Hashem existed. It doesn't make any sense. Okay, I understand the Jewish people. They're Hashem's children. They're the chosen ones. They're the ones who you see. You can understand why Hashem would be so happy. But all of a sudden, Yitro, who literally has done nothing to, so to speak, elicit Hashem's love and compassion, because he's been busy his whole life with worshiping false entities and investing in those entities and living with those entities and causing destruction within their personal life and in the world at large because of those entities. When he realizes Hashem exists, Hashem goes crazy from happiness. Why? Because Hashem gets his primary joy when those who are furthest come closest. And this Rabbi Nachman brings in the 10th lesson of Likutei Moharan. And now we're learning something very deep. Anybody who decides then to become busy with bringing close those who are far, and to elevate those sparks of kedusha mibein klipot, from between the klipot, meaning to help elevate secular Jews who don't know Hashem, or even people who were born in religious families, but it's not authentic, it's not genuine, it's twisted, it's distorted, and you help that person have a real, genuine relationship with Hashem. That is not just an act of kiruv. You are literally achieving the purpose of creation. You're going down into the klipot and you're lifting that soul up. You're lifting that spark of the original 288 sparks of godliness back up from the darkness so that they can recognize Hashem too. This is Hashem's greatest nachat, his greatest joy. HaKadosh Baruch Hu mishalem lo schar gadol ma'od. Hashem gives and recompenses that person with tremendous reward, very great reward. And he brings him to the highest states of spiritual elevation and consciousness. That person specifically. The one who descends down into hell to lift up his fallen brothers and sisters, these sparks of godliness, that they should be able to recognize good and joy and peace and godliness in their life. And so we see, and now it all makes sense. Why did the king send the daughter into darkness, to the place of no good? You know, my Rabbi Rav Walken used to say this all the time. Depending on where you're holding, that's how you experience Hashem. When a person lives in a way where they judge everybody else and they see everything unfavorably, when they read the Torah, they see very scary things. Hashem says this is going to happen to you. Hashem says that's going to happen to you. This is the punishment for that. This is the punishment for this. But my Rabbi Rav Walken, who it was his 2-year Hilula recently, and his neshama should have an aliyah, he used to say, but a person who's kind, and a person who has worked on himself, and a person who's loving and empathetic, when he reads the Torah, he doesn't read it like that. He reads it like a letter of a concerned father or mother or brother or sister. He says, if you do this, you know what's going to happen to you? This is going to happen to you. It's the same words, but in a totally different way. So too, in the beginning of the story, how did we read this? The king got angry, and he said, let the no good one take you away. But there's another way to read this. The king was angry. And he said, my dear daughter, go to the place of no good. Because I love you so much. Because I believe in you so much. Because I want to give you the greatest good. Go bring back those 288 sparks of godliness which fell in the beginning of creation, so I can give you such sweet love. Because of my love and compassion for you, go down to that place and lift these sparks back up, so I can give you this great good. And that's why the king's daughter is the only one who goes down into exile and not the sons. This is why Hashem's compassion is the only thing that goes into exile and not his din, not his judgment. Why do we see his judgment everywhere? Why don't we see his love? Why don't we see his compassion? His compassion's in exile. Emunah is in exile. Why? Because he loves Emunah so much. He didn't give this mission to his sons because they wouldn't be able to stand in this trial. Because in the time that man needs to descend down into the klipot, which is not just at the beginning of creation, Hashem is constantly, like so to speak, we're on like a rope, and he's bringing us down like bungee jumpers into this darkness. And then we lift up these klipot and he brings us back out. And then when we finally think we figured it out, oh, I got it. Now I'm connected. Now I'm close. Now this, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, we're back in darkness in an even greater why. Why? Because of his love for you. He's bringing you back down into the klipot to lift up more sparks of godliness. Because only you are capable of going through this and lifting up the good from this darkness. Ovrim alav yeridot gedolot ma'od. And that this person, he needs to have all of these tremendous descents come over him. And all of his negative qualities start to strengthen on him, things that he hadn't dealt with before. Anxiety, sadness, fear, anger, jealousy, ego, desire for money, desire for physical pleasure beyond what's necessary. All of these things start to become strengthened when he starts working on himself, and it doesn't make any sense. I don't understand. I didn't even care about this before. I wasn't even working on this before, and I wasn't struggling with it as much as I am now. And now all of a sudden I decide I really want to be close to Hashem, and all of these things start to well up inside of me. All of these circumstances in my life are starting to give birth to all of this darkness that I didn't even know was inside of me. What is that? Hashem is bringing me down into the klipot, because you are the only one who's capable of lifting up and revealing Hashem in that place. And it's not because Hashem's angry at you, it's because Hashem loves you. And the Or HaChaim says something unbelievable. And the Zohar says this as well. What's the proof that Hashem loves you and wants you? when you want and love Hashem. That feeling of Hashem's love and desire for you is being projected through your own heart. How do you know that Hashem wants you? If you want Hashem. It's crazy if you think about it. That moment that you decided, I want Hashem, I want you. It's because Hashem is saying, I want you. And the deeper that want gets, it's only a reflection and projection of the deeper want that Hashem has for you. So not to think to ourselves, chas v'shalom, that we're struggling because Hashem doesn't want us. It's adrabah, like Rabbi Nachman says in Likutei Moharan. All distancing is for the sake of being brought closer. Hashem is not doing this because He's angry with you. He's doing this because He loves you. He's doing this because He believes in you. And thus, da'at, knowledge of Hashem, real felt experience of Hashem's love, the sons cannot stand in this trial. Intellectual conscious awareness of God cannot stand in the trial of the klipot of the darkness. Because immediately, as soon as das goes into exile, it becomes confused and jumbled. As soon as knowledge of Hashem, and as soon as intellectual proof of God goes into the klipot, goes into the darkness, it cannot stand that trial because the das becomes jumbled. And the das starts to ask questions on Hashem. Why? Because the das is purely intellectual. The knowledge of God is purely intellectual. So as soon as I start to go through the darkness, what's going to happen? I don't intellectually perceive God. I don't actually see Him in my life the way that David keeps talking about Him. I don't see Him the way that Rabbi Nachman keeps talking about Him, that He loves me, He wants the best. I don't see that at all, bichlal. So where is that? Because you're thinking with your das. Because we're thinking with our das. And our das is not capable of withstanding the darkness. Hashem didn't send us down here to utilize das. He sent the princess down here because she's the only one who could stand in this trial. And this person separates from Hashem in that place. And this is passing no judgment on anyone who's ever been through anything. But you see that normally when people go through difficulties and challenges in their life, they go in two different directions. People sometimes come out and they lost their belief in God. How could Hashem do this to me? How could Hashem put me through this? How could Hashem do this to my friends and family members? How could this Shoah, this Holocaust have taken place? How can the Inquisition have taken place? How could we have been through these tremendous Yisrael that you could never even think up of? And the answer is, you're right. There is no way to fathom it. Because it goes beyond the six sons. It goes beyond intellectual understanding. This breaks the matrix. It doesn't make any sense. That's right. And if you think from that place of sense, of intellect, you will turn away. Because das cannot hold what's taking place. It can't rectify what's broken. It can't heal that which has become sick. It can't release the sparks of godliness that have fell to this place. Aval Emuna, however, the princess, simple faith, she is able to strengthen herself, and able to draw even closer to Hashem because of the darkness. This is an unbelievable thing. As soon as darkness hits, the sons automatically start moving the other way. But on the other hand, if a person reorients themselves and stops trying to use their intellect to understand what's taking place, stops trying to hang out with the six sons, and instead starts to look for the daughter within him and live with the daughter within him, then all of a sudden she's getting closer to Hashem. You're getting closer to Hashem from the darkness itself, because the opposite effect takes place with Emunah. That when Emunah is confronted by difficulties, Emunah gets bigger. Emunah gets stronger. Gam b'mitzavim shel yiridat bilbu adat Also in the situation of descent and in the bilbul, in the confusion of the knowledge of Hashem's goodness, when that takes place, bedavka, emuna shines. V'lechem bizman she'avrim al adam nishnonot. And thus, in the time that passes on a person, all of these challenges, all of these tests, tzarich lesalek et adat. This is the Chiddush of Rabbi Nachman, which is based on deep Kabbalah, and this is mamish, probably the most unique feature of Breslov Chassidut. The Rabbi Nachman says that when you go through darkness, you need to misalik your das. You need to let your mind go. You need to stop trying to understand what's taking place. Not because it's dogma, not because this is religious, I can't even say the word. It's early for me. Propaganda. It's not because I want you to believe, even though you don't experience it. And so I'm giving you all these niceties, even though you're not seeing it. And so the only way to deal with it is through faith. No, it's much deeper than that. Das cannot withstand the exile. The 6 sons were not sent down to deal with it. Only the daughter is sent to the place of no good because of Hashem's love. She's the only one who can elicit Hashem's compassion. Only simple faith. And not only that, she gets closer to the king through being sent down there. Because Amunah gets closer, responds in a more beautiful, more expressive, more blossoming way. Through the darkness itself, she is given birth to. Like when Avram Avinu was going down to Mitzrayim. Prior to this, you don't hear anything about Sarah Imenu. But all of a sudden, as soon as they're going down to Mitzrayim, the Torah says that Abraham saw how beautiful Sarah was. It says, now I see how beautiful you are. And the Chachamim, they don't understand this at all. What do you mean? You've been with her for 90 years. You've been with Sarah your whole life. Okay, she's modest. You're modest. Okay, so you don't see her in that way. You're very spiritually elevated. So you don't see her in a purely physical sense. I got it. Okay, great. But you don't see that your wife is beautiful? You never chop that? You really never got that? I wrote about this one of the articles that we did for Tzion Breslov, the Breeze of Breslov. This is a question that I've struggled with for years. I've always thought about it. And this year Hashem, Baruch Hashem, gave me something that I feel is emet lamito, the truth of truths. Rabbi Nachman teaches in the 10th Torah of Likutei Moharan that Sarah represents Tefillah, or Emunah, the lost princess. And Abraham represents the tzaddik, or what we're going to learn in the story is the viceroy. All of a sudden, this whole story is about the tzaddik. It's about the righteous one. It's about the spiritually elevated one, the one who has das. And that's great in Eretz Yisrael. But all of a sudden, there's a famine that strikes. And he needs to go down to the place of darkness, to Mitzrayim, which is a code word for these broken shards of glass which contain the godliness that's hidden there. Right when Avraham realizes Hashem exists and wants to be close to him, Avraham immediately has to go down to Mitzrayim. I don't understand. I just got to Eretz Yisrael. I just realized you existed. I got to the place of knowing you. What are you doing to me? Oh, I see you want me. Good. Now I'm going to send you to Mitzrayim. Because there are souls that are trapped there. There are sparks of godliness that are trapped there. And only you, the tzaddik, only you, the Jew, are capable of going down to that place and lifting her out. However, we're going to have to shift the storyline now. Because if it's just about you, Abraham, you're not going to make it. But your wife, Sarah, she's a knockout. She's beautiful like you can't imagine. Because Sarah is tefillah. Sarah is emunah. Sarah is the place of throwing away one's consciousness. And then Abraham says, oh, now I realize how beautiful you are. I didn't need you before. Because I can just literally chop everything on intellectual understanding. And this is explicit in the Zohar, that the whole and in the Midrashim, how did Abraham realize Hashem existed? And he's the first Jew. He does it through intellectual inquiry. He's understanding all the elements of creation, and he realizes there has to be some orchestrator of reality. But when he got to Eretz Yisrael, he didn't understand how it worked. And it was there that he looked up and he realized, I don't understand this. And Hashem that says, that's right. This is the place of no understanding. Because when you get to the place of knowing everything, there's a higher level of knowing. It's called knowing you don't know. And this is the realm of Sari Menu. Only Sarah can stand up in this place. And this is the secret of Paro. Paro represents the tohu, the chaos in one's life. He kidnaps Sarah, meaning he kidnaps your faith. And all of a sudden, Sarah is without Abraham. Abraham is looking on from afar. And Sarah is alone now in the darkness with Paro. And she doesn't understand, what did I do to deserve this? Why am I doing this? Even afterwards, it's the Chazal said, Sarah was upset with Abraham. Why did you leave me alone to do this? I understand, even with Hashem, she said, I understand Abraham being sent down here because he knows you. But I don't know you yet. And you sent me down to this place. But that's B'davka the reason why. Because knowledge cannot beat Paro. Because intellectual understanding of God is not strong enough to overcome Paro. The only thing which can overcome Paro and cause Paro to become sick and to lift up the godliness which is struck down in Mitzrayim is Sari Menu, is the place of not knowing, is believing without understanding. It's Emuna Peshuta, it's the lost princess. And after this it says that Paro gave Sarah and Abraham gold, silver, animals, all of this livestock. What was all of that? Those were the sparks of godliness that were trapped there from the beginning of creation. And yes, in the beginning of your journey, you need to become a tzaddik. But when you really find Hashem, or you're trying to find Hashem, and Hashem sees that you're genuine, and that you want Him very much, then you're going to have to throw Avram away. And you're going to need Sarah now. And you're going to have to realize how beautiful she is. I want to end with this point, and then we'll continue Bezrat Hashem next week. There's something that always bothered me. We know that Chazal say clearly that in the times of the exile of Mitzrayim, on the 9th plague of darkness, which now we can understand the depths of what that darkness is, the chastara, shebeto chastara, the concealment within the concealment, 4/5 of the Jewish people died. 80% of the Jewish people did not make it. Only 1/5 made it out. Only 20% made it out. And people all of the time speak about this. Of course it's going to be like that. Because we know that Chazal say, when the Mashiach comes and the Geula takes place, it's going to be just like Mitzrayim. This is a klal in the Torah, it's a rule in the Torah. The redemption of the final generation, us, is going to parallel and mirror the redemption from Mitzrayim exactly. That means only 20% is going to make it. Okay, so it makes sense why 20% is busy with this and 80% is not. This thought horrifies me. How could you say that? I don't even understand it. Okay, yeah, if you're dealing with a math problem and you're a doctor or a scientist and you're dealing with numbers, so okay, good. I can understand how that would make you feel better. But if you think that this is your brother or your sister, or you think that this is your father or your mother, or this is your daughter or your son, do you have 5 children and you say 4 are going to die and 1 is going to make it? Woohoo! Yeah, baby. We did it. This is great. 4 of my kids completely went off. 1 is a drug addict. 1 is addicted to porn and he's struggling to get married. And the other one has some type of intellectual disability. And the other one is always depressed. But I have 1 son who's kind and nice and he found his marriage partner. The parent's going to be happy about that? How is it that Hashem could be happy that 4/5 of his children don't make it? His children, banim, not robots. And the Lubavitcher Rebbe says something unbelievable, which seems to contradict what the Chazal say. And how could a tzaddik contradict what Chazal say? The Lubavitcher Rebbe said explicitly that in the final redemption, Mashiach will not leave 1 Jew behind. So we have a kasha. We have a very big kasha. I understand what the Lubavitcher Rebbe says because it makes sense to me. that Hashem would not leave any of his children behind. Because it says it in the Torah explicitly, that I'm going to go to the ends of existence and bring you back from that place of darkness. And you're going to realize that I'm in that place specifically. It says it in many places. That I understand. That Hashem wants to help every single one of us. And somehow, in some unbelievable way, he's going to flip the script. And all the Jewish people are going to be brought back to him. That I get. But you cannot deny a statement of Chazal. That just like in the original exile, the redemption only included 20%, 1/5. So too, the final Geula has to mirror that. So how do we reconcile this? And I heard Rav Yitzchak Ginsburg say the most unbelievable thing. That according to Kabbalah, according to Chassidut, according to the secret, the Sod, which actually explains the Pshat. And by the way, the Vilna Gaon says this explicitly, that there is no way to understand the simple understanding of any pasuk, any verse, or any concept in the Torah without understanding the Kabbalistic mystical secret behind it. There are 5 levels to a Jewish soul. What's taking place in our personal lives is we are trying to experience, we're trying to touch, we're trying to taste the highest part of our own soul. The place that's called the Yechidah, the spark of Mashiach inside of each of us. However, in order for that to take place, like peels of an onion, you need to first be able to let go of those 4 peels, those 4 lower levels of your soul. And so Rabbi Yitzchak Ginsburg says, what does it mean that 4/5 got left behind in Mitzrayim? It means one's lower self died in Mitzrayim, and only one's higher self made it out. One's ego melted away in Mitzrayim, but one's emunah survived. And now we could understand, how could it be that in the final generation, Hashem is going to save every single person, but 4/5 is going to get left behind? Because the part of us that's going to make it out is only the highest part of us. The place of ayin, the place of nothingness, the place of emunah, the place of the princess, the place which goes above and beyond all constriction, which goes above and beyond all ego. That's the place that makes it out. And when we think about our personal lives and the fact that we just had Pesach, we just had our own collective Geula again, and a lot of us, specifically for sure myself, had a very difficult time. But to know what's taking place right now, 4/5 is getting left behind. 1/5 is making it out. The highest part of me is going to come out of all of this. And I need to hold on to the teachings of the tzaddik. I need to be able to believe right now, not to know. Because knowing will pull me away, because knowing is going to bring up questions in a place that there is no questions. But if I can dig down deep and muster the courage to not try and know right now, but to try and believe that Hashem is good even though I don't see it, then my belief will actually grow from this. And I will experience the purpose of my having been brought down here, which is the fact that there are sparks of godliness which are trapped in this place since time immemorial. And only you, Dan, Zach, Bracha, Miriam, Aaron, Hallel, are capable, literally, and I don't mean this facetiously or to make you feel good, you are the only ones capable of lifting up that light. And so Hashem waited 5,782 years for you to go elevated. So then why did I have this thing come out of nowhere? Why did I start to break as soon as I wanted to be close to Hashem? Why was I breaking even before that? Because you're the princess, and Hashem loves you with an intense, fervent, unbelievable love, and He gets all of His nachat from you. And He wants you to experience the place of no good, so that you could find the good there. And through doing so, you heal the whole world. And this is the greatest joy for us. This is the greatest good. And this is the intensification of the relationship with the King. And then we get to see at the end of the day that even when the King sent us to the place of no good, He never really left. And we never really left Him. But it's only the Viceroy we're going to see who's capable of teaching us that. Does anybody have any questions for the end of this Chabura? Okay. And by the way, these questions are specifically, should be guided towards what we're speaking about in this class. If you have other questions which are good, necessary, there's other forums for that. But for this class, we want to speak specifically about what we spoke tonight about, okay? So therefore, if I see a question which doesn't have to do with tonight, or today, this morning, depending on where you are, I'm not going to answer it right now.
Can you answer the ones that are relevant that are asked?
I'm going to look on the side and see if they're relevant, and then we're going to go with it, okay? So everybody can put themselves back on mute, and I'm going to try to answer these questions. There's a question on the bottom which relates to what we spoke about, that only 1/5 make it out, and it seems like from Chazal that in some ways only Jews that make it out of exile. And so then why would Hashem create all else? But we see very clearly in Halakha that the Rambam says that people who are not Jewish, who are good people, they also make it. So then what is that? And the answer is very deep. And that is that the only part that makes it out of existence is the Jewish part of existence. It doesn't just mean the physical Jew. It means the Jewish part of reality, the godly part of reality. So even in the non-Jew, he has a part of him which is Jewish, which is the part of him which is the spark of godliness. That part of him is going to make it out. Okay? And this is the secret of how it says that the land of Israel is going to spread throughout the world. That the domain of Eretz Yisrael will not be confined to this small land, but in fact the whole world is going to be called Eretz Yisrael after the Mashiach comes. And that all of Eretz Yisrael is going to become Yerushalayim. And all of Yerushalayim is going to be considered the Beit HaMikdash. And all the Beit HaMikdash is going to be considered the Kodesh. And the Kodesh is going to be considered the Kodesh HaKadoshim. What is this? And instead of the Jewish people being Kohanim, Levi'im, Yisrael, in the times of the Geula, all the Jewish people are going to become Kohanim. And the answer is that the spark of godliness, which is inside of us, the highest part of ourselves, this is what makes it. And that's in the world at large. And that spreads throughout the world. Okay? Everybody has a different point in which the princess got lost in their life. Some people, it was when they were born. For the Baal Shem Tov, it was when he was orphaned at 3, when he lost his father, and 4, when he lost his mother. And his father said to him, before he passed away, I want you to know 2 things. To live with these 2 things the rest of your life, and nothing else. Have yirat Hashem. Fear Hashem only. And love every single Jewish man and woman, no matter what they've done in their life. For him, that's when there was the lost princess being sent. When he was then sent into an orphanage to live in this broken home with these broken people. And to find the godliness from that place. That gave birth to Chassidus, that gave birth to the movement which is going to bring the Geula. It all came from that place of darkness. Everybody has their own time and space when this happens, or multiple times when this happens. How do you get out of Mitzrayim? With Emunah. Can you give us some practical suggestions for actions in tefillot as soon as the darkness hits? Yes, as soon as the darkness hits, understand that I have been sent down to this place to lift up something that's been trapped here. Hashem, I understand now that the only way for me to release what's trapped here is through Emunah, it's through tefillah. Because at the level of the sons, This spark of godliness cannot be released, because at the level of the sons, it's only mida keneged mida. There's only judgment. But for me to release this spark, I need that your compassion should be revealed here. And the king is only revealed in the place where the daughter is. That means my emunah. Only when my emunah shines brighter will I release the spark which is trapped here. Hashem, please help me to throw away my intellectual understanding of what's taking place and access a higher level of consciousness, which is called emunah. Because in this place of intellect, I will only go further, and that's not the purpose of me being here. And this is not a punishment. This is from Hashem's love for me. Hashem loves me so much and believes in me so much, He brought me to this place. Hashem, please help me to believe in you more than what I see. Help me to believe in your good more than what I see. The Zohar teaches that there's this beautiful maiden with no eyes. It's a very scary image that the Zohar speaks about, but it's the most beautiful image. The beautiful maiden with no eyes. That's scary. Can you imagine seeing it? It's like a horror movie. Why is she beautiful? Because she has no eyes. Eyes represents intellectual understanding. She's beautiful because she has no eyes, and therefore she only sees good. Because at the level of emunah, a Jew can experience the good no matter what they go through in their life. But at the level of seeing, your eyes can get very dim very quickly. But what we're learning here is when I'm in the light and everything's going good, it's the time to open my eyes as much as possible, to try and know Hashem. But when darkness strikes, I have been brought down in my bungee cord into the darkness, into the klipa, to be able to extract some godliness that has been trapped here that only I can bring out. Now is not the time for me to open my eyes. It doesn't help in a place that's pitch dark. Now is the time for me to believe in good, to believe that Hashem loves me, to believe that Hashem is doing this because He wants the best for me, to know and to understand and believe at a level which is deeper than intellect, that I'm in this place to do something which is life-changing for everyone around me, to bring the Geula, to bring redemption, to bring Mashiach, to believe in good even when I don't see it. Someone asked, why is Judaism passed down through the mother and not the father? So this is I'm only going to answer this because it actually is relevant, even though we're not seeing that it's relevant. Father represents intellectual knowledge of God, and the mother represents emunah. We are not the products of intellectual knowledge. Avram Avinu did not give birth to us through his intellectual knowledge of God. He couldn't give birth there. Listen to this, it's a very deep secret. Avram Avinu could not give birth to Yitzchak while his relationship with Hashem was based on intellectual understanding. It was only when he capped out in his intellectual understanding and he came to Eretz Yisrael, the place that's beyond understanding, that he acquired something called emunah. He got the letter Hey. It was added to his name. And then he was able to give birth to Yitzchak Avinu. Because Yitzchak Avinu is born from faith. Light is born from darkness. Yitzchak comes from the word, the Yisrael says, Ketz Chai. If you flip the letters around, it means Ketz Chai, the end of life. Yitzchak comes from where life ends. Where my life burned to the ground and went in flames. That's where Yitzchak is born from. Because Yitzchak is born from emunah. Mashiach is born from emunah. Redemption, healing is born from faith. That faith that comes from not understanding. And a Jew is born from emunah, is born from the mother, not from the father. How are we supposed to know what light we're meant to take out when we're in the darkness? You don't need to. You don't need to. You don't have to know. We're going to learn later on different Torahs in Likutei Moharan that are referenced, where Rabbi Nachman helps you to figure out the hints. But for you to be able to actually perceive what's trapped, you need to get to very high levels of spirituality. And you could do it. But it's not necessary for lifting up the sparks. The only thing that's necessary for lifting up sparks of godliness is emunah / tefillah. When you kick into emunah or tefillah in the place of darkness, all you need to do is know there's sparks that are trapped here. If not, I wouldn't be here. And how do I come through this? I'm not going to come through this through knowledge, through intellectual understanding. I will only come through this through a strengthening and a higher level of emunah than I previously have lived with. And that will not only take me out of this place, but that will lift up the sparks of godliness that are stuck here, whoever that is and whatever that is. Okay, everybody have an amazing day. I highly suggest after this class is over, you take some notes down of key points that you took from this class. Please share those points with your brothers and sisters and your chaguras. And again, I spoke about this many times in the past. We have Rabbi Nachman, thank God. We have the Nekuda of the Tzaddik. And you have a friend. And you have yourself. Yourself is listening, so you're here. The spark of godliness is inside of you. When you go do Hipodadut and you speak over the things that you learned in this class, you turn the Torah into tefillah, you're going to experience the Nekuda of the Tzaddik inside of you, and you're going to develop deeper levels of belief and knowledge through talking out to Hashem what you learned here. And then you have the Nekuda of the Tzaddik from the teachings of the Tzaddik himself. But there's a third level, and you need to reveal that level. That's the level of the friend. Okay? We're all friends here. I'm trying to be a good friend. You guys are definitely all good friends to me. When you go on the groups and you talk to each other, not about Stam, but specifically about what you learned in these classes and what you experience when you try and live with these teachings, then another person can come and say, oh, I also went through that. And this is how I went through it. Oh, I also struggled with that. And this is the understanding that I came out with. Oh, I also learned that. And then 3 years ago, I heard this from Rabbi Kalmus's class, that Rabbi Nachman says like this, or blah, 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 blah. That is the Nekuda of the Tzaddik and the friend. And you need all three levels, all three Nekudas. You need these 3 points in order to find Hashem in your life and to move beyond. Okay? So to use these groups, not as like, WhatsApp, another superficial means of wasting time, but to use it really as a resource and a tool. I have a koach in this group to experience the light of godliness that can only be found in the friend, the one who's on the journey with me, the one who's b'derech. Everybody have an amazing, amazing week, an amazing Rosh Chodesh, an amazing Shavua, an amazing week. And we should be able to see the light of Tiferet this week. This is the week in which Tiferet, which is beauty, which is actually compassion, should be revealed. We all went through the week of Gevurah. We all experienced in our own mind and heart what that felt like. Baruch Hashem, that was also for the good. But now it's time for compassion. It's time for love. It's time for beauty. It's time for something which goes above nature. I need consolation now. I need empathy. I need rachamim. Hashem should let us see it in ways that we can't possibly fathom, and to show us the good in everything that we've been through.